We know these two people are going to end up together. That's why we're here. But this is never going to happen. And then to be surprised that it does, I think is the writer's job, right?
What is a meet cute?
Well, essentially it's the first time that our two leads that we know are going to end up together meet for the very first time. And it's sort of been established in rom-coms that it's a little better if that's a cute way of meeting, a sort of a different way of meeting.
Can you give us some examples of sort of the cliche meet cutes that are often...
We see a lot of bumping into one another, a lot of mistaken identity is a very big one. One person thinks somebody is somebody else, of course. Typically a clash or a conflict is a strong one, you know, where we tell right away these two people are very different and we see it from that first meeting, so it's not so cute.
Taking up a parking space or cutting in line or something like that.
Exactly, yeah, or cutting in line, doing something opposite of each other's behavior is a good setup for a good meet cute.
So usually there's going to be conflict or just an uncomfortability at first?
I think there could be both. It could just be a very unexpected meeting, but I think if there's conflict, then we sort of have our built-in conflict already because we already know these two people are very different or they feel very strongly a certain way. If we can establish as much about each lead in that initial meeting, then we're off and running, you know?
What do you think about the two main characters being at odds or even hating each other in the beginning of the story?
Well, I think, again, it sets us up. It gives us our conflict. That gives us our, sort of external conflict right away. It's like each other, they don't like each other. How could we ever like this person? And as a writer, as an audience, it gives us a very far way to go. And that's what the challenge as a writer is, how do we get these people that we genuinely believe don't like each other, are so opposite, to this point? And usually, of course, throughout that story, it's about revealing things about them that we don't know from that first meeting. And once we learn the things about them later, we see maybe that's why they are the way they were, and we see that's why they are able to grow, and then we believe that once we establish those plot points throughout the movie.
What do you think about having two leads meet in a disastrous way?
That works. Disastrous as in like surroundings or spilling a coffee on each other?
Yeah, maybe spilling a coffee or fender bender. Or
yeah, it definitely works. I think any sort of unexpected meeting of this person, because then it kind of brings up the question of, were we meant to meet? Was this fate, that I rear-ended you, on the green light, not the red light, So I think, sure, yeah, that works.
How does the meet cute introduce us to the foundation of conflict in the story?
I think if you can set it up right away that they can be at odds with each other, then we don't have to try so hard to create more conflict. It's sort of given to us through, if we do our job and show through that meet cute who these characters are, then we have that to use throughout the entire story.
Do you have a favorite meet cute?
Well, I guess, I don't know if it's a meet cute, but Harry Met Sally, of course, their first time together is, set up in a weird circumstance that her friend, sets them up to drive home together. And that doesn't happen all the time. And then, of course, what I think we like about that is at the end of the movie, we think, wow, that was fate. 12 years later, if that hadn't happened, then they're not in love now. And I think that's sort of the point of an interesting meet cute is to think, oh, this is never going to happen. We know we're watching this rom-com. We know these two people are going to end up together. That's why we're here. But this is never going to happen. And then to be surprised that it does, I think is the writer's job, right?
If you were going to write an enemies to lovers story, how would you write the meet cute?
Well, we'd want to put them in a surrounding that favors one, probably a protagonist, the female lead, that favors her, makes her comfortable, and have the male be completely disruptive. And so I think sometimes in finding those strong opposites can really create those enemies. And then, of course, we really need to see that they're not so opposite after all. they have very much in common, leading them, throughout the story we see that they go from enemies to lovers.
Are there any taboos in rom-coms to try to stay away from, especially for specific networks?
I think you don't want either of the characters to be too harsh or too unlikable. You don't have a lot of time to get that back. So although they may be at odds with each other and they may be opposite, we don't want either one of them to be too unlikable.
And then unlikable or unrelatable as well?
Well, I think maybe unrelatable, let's say you have the male lead come in, and we have our perfect sort of, protagonist already. And I think he can be sort of unlikable in the beginning, as long as we find out the reason he's that way has to do with something that makes him vulnerable like heartache or loss. And then as long as we later, maybe not too far off, find out why he behaves that way, then I think we're okay.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess, is relatability just so much of a seller when it comes to so many of these types of films? Like, we have to be able to, the female has to be able to relate to the protagonist.
I think so. I think so. At least it's been explained to me that way for the audience. Not even just for America, but across the world. When movies play everywhere else, we want them to be able to kind of find something in that true lead that they can relate to.
We're wondering if you can share with us maybe 3 of your favorite meet cutes that you've written.
Well, a recent one, I used sort of the mistaken identity one, where the lead very much needs a job at a cafe. She very much needs the manager to hire her, and of course when he shows up, she has no idea he's the manager, and she's horrible at serving and everything else, and of course insults him and everything until it's explained that he is in fact the manager, but he lets her slide because of her charm. Yeah. So I think
That's a good one.
Yeah, so little tropes like that, like a mistaken identity. I guess sometimes in other ones, just I have 2 matchmakers that are thrown together. They both show up thinking they're meeting with a client, but it's instead a matchmaker. So then naturally they're competitive. So we've set that dynamic up right away. So. Yeah.
And is there a third?
And I've recently had a one where rival professionals, or they both do the same thing. They're both on-air host, and they know of each other, which is a little different twist. They know of each other, but they've never actually met. But of course, the first time they meet is he's taking her job. So that, of course, creates that instant conflict and I guess, them being at odds with each other.